doesn't get more do or die than when you're 0-2, as 14 teams made it to the playoffs last year. None of them had an 0-2 start to the season. The Raiders will be going into Tennessee this week, both looking for their first victory. Kyle, what are your early thoughts on this one?
I think there's only like 5 0-2 teams in the NFL this year, and it's like the Bengals, Raiders, Titans, Panthers, and Falcons, basically. So the odds are that 9% of the time when you start 0-2, you make the playoffs, or it's either 9 or 11%. But basically, you got a 1 in 10 chance, which means if there's 6 0-2 teams, 0 or 1 of them will make the playoffs. Now, I think the Bengals will be that team that makes the playoffs if any of the 0-2 teams, but it's a big deal for the Raiders and Titans because both of those teams are teams that, I mean, I'm more down on the Titans than others, but teams that people could convince themselves would make the playoffs at the start of the season. And I'm sure some people were even picking the Raiders to win the AFC West in a lot of cases. And not a lot of cases, some cases, but people believed in the Raiders and people thought the Titans would win the pyramid scheme AFC South. And both of these teams find themselves in difficult situations. So I think it's interesting just in terms of the matchups. Obviously, the Titans have already lost Harold Landry and their defense hasn't been great in slowing down Saquon Barkley or the Bills, which is 2 different ways of death. Like Saquon Barkley is like 5 yards at a time on the ground and the Bills are 50 yards at a time in the air. So maybe the Titans just can't stop anyone, but the Raiders will have a unique opportunity going into this game where they themselves should be 1-1. They feel like they should be 1-1, and they will get a chance to go up against a Titans team whose strength is going to be pass rushing. So I guess we'll see whether the Raiders can protect for Derek Carr and what the offense is going to look like there.
Who do you think needs this one more?
Didn't we do this last week with the Cardinals and the Raiders? Let's see.
I mean, worse situation for both.
Yeah. Let's say Titans, because the Titans are a worse team, I will say, but I mean, both teams kind of need this bad to keep their season from going off the rails. I mean, the Raiders season doesn't get much easier after this.
You mentioned in terms of the playoff math, though, with the AFC South, there's still an opportunity, outside opportunity at 0-3, even for the Titans. The Raiders, if you fall to 0-3 with everything else around you, we don't know if Denver's any good or not. I mean, that's TBD still on the season. The Chargers, we know, are good. We know the Chiefs are good. Luckily for you, if you're the Raiders, they had to play each other in week 2. So someone had to lose that game, and it was the Chargers for your sake. For the Raiders, obviously you made the big additions. You hired McDaniel. Who really needs this one more on an individual basis is McDaniels. I mean, he was already a big question mark coming into the year because people just wanted to write off Denver as just, that bad, awkward high school phase, had to wear braces or thought a mustache was
so
cool.
The NFL equivalent of braces is Tim Tebow.
Yeah, exactly. That was like his mullet phase. That was his mohawk phase. For me, that was a mustache in high school. So regret that one. Don't look it up. Don't do it.
How could
anyway, just protecting myself. When it comes to Josh McDaniels, a lot of people were willing to write that one off as just, it happens. You're a young coach. A lot of young coaches have failed before and come back better for it. But, you come to the situation and the Raiders look like they were a playoff team last year, right? That was the thing we said. They were a playoff team. So you just couldn't make the thing worse. And right now they feel worse. At 0-2, you feel worse than you were a season ago. And they had to make the playoffs. They had to scrap. They had to claw. This Raiders team shouldn't have to do that. And based on the additions they made talent-wise, Devontae Adams and Chandler Jones, 2 all-pro caliber players, or at least Chandler Jones was. He's still a very good player. And you think that him and Max Crosby could be a talented pass rush. And obviously you came off game in which you just blew. Like the Tennessee Titans were never even in their game. They can't even say, man, we just held him to 3 touchdowns rather than 4. For the Raiders, you had Kyler Murray, but he just run around 80 yards, 20 seconds on a 2-point conversion play. That's embarrassing.
97.3% chance the Raiders beat the Cardinals when they were up 22-0 in the third quarter. 97.2% chance they win that game.
So McDaniels needs this one not just because he needs to keep the Raiders' playoff hopes alive, but he needs this one because you need to rub the stink off of that week 2 loss. You just need to put that in the rearview mirror and kind of make people think that you're not a clown show, because you also have to overcome the failures of the Belichick coaching tree. Fair or not, that's part of this thing that people are going to use against McDaniels if he doesn't succeed with the Raiders. So are you telling it offensive mind? You mentioned it in our Dolphins breakdown, but Devontae Adams, what did you say? He had 2 catches last week?
2 catches, 12 yards, and a touchdown. Fewest yards and catches since September of 2017. Fun fact, he actually did have a touchdown in that game as well.
See, how do you let that happen? If you are one of the most gifted offensive minds in pro sports, in pro football, how do you let your number 1 wide receiver go that under targeted?
So there's actually a good explanation for this. And it's really, again, I am an X's and O's person, but not someone who's watching films. So basically going into this game, Cardinals have worst cornerback room in the NFL, best safety room in the NFL. It's a really, really nice toss. It's a very, very interesting combination between the Raiders and Cardinals, between the Cardinals corners and the Cardinals safeties. Best safety tandem, worst corner tandem. And so basically they had a scheme going into the game, which is if the Cardinals play this zone, we're going to exploit it and go to Devontae Adams. But if they play this man-to-man and draw the safety down to Adams, we're just going to throw Mac Hollins, maybe mix in some Renfro, mix in some Waller, but basically say Mac Hollins, easy spot in the middle of the field. And Mac Hollins had like 9 catches on 11 targets. It was really weird how that played out for the Raiders. But basically they committed to a pregame game plan, and it felt like they didn't really adjust from it. And then once they got the lead, they just kept running the ball with Josh Jacobs. They just kept running. And it led to the Cardinals switching time of possession from where the Cardinals were out-timed 16-6 in the first half to then, after it being 16-6, it was 30-13 the rest of the game after the Raiders outscored them out time of possession them +10. So they basically just decided, they're giving us Mac Hollins, they're giving us Renfro, we're just going to take it instead of working to Devontae Adams. And basically allowing the Cardinals to defend Adams on every play. And it's just an uncreative game plan. That's what I was saying. Uncreative play.
That is the crux of this whole thing. McDaniels is supposed to be the most creative person, or one of the top 5 most creative people in the NFL. That's where he hung his hat on. And if you're not displaying it, then what the hell did I hire you for? It's like, what do you even do around here is what people are going to start asking. So the best deodorant, obviously, is to start winning games. And at least through 2 games, Tennessee hasn't looked good at all, right? If you're the Raiders, you were at least up in your last game. You were close to winning against the Chargers. I think the pick here is the Raiders, even on the road, as 2-point favorites, just because they look like they're a team that's trending in the right direction. But if you told me that Derrick Henry had his breakout game in week 3, I wouldn't be surprised. And at that point, God, what are the conversations going to be around McDaniels? This is supposed to be the part of the schedule you're supposed to be
something else.
Yeah, that's going to be something you're not going to want to. That's going to be something fun to talk about, but not going to be fun to talk about if you're in the McDaniels household. Anyway, briefly, I went Raiders. Yeah. What are you on?
Briefly on the Titans, that we know how I feel about the Titans. Last year, I was very adamant about how the Titans were stealing the number 1 seed from my beloved Patrick Mahomes, and I was proven right very, very quickly in the playoffs, because they were not even better than the Colts last year. Just schedule broke their way, happened to get the number 1 seed. And as someone who has done a full podcast about how the Titans should follow the Eagles model, play Malik Willis the way the Eagles did with Jalen Hurts, and trade Derrick Henry for 3 draft picks to the Los Angeles Rams, I think that the Titans window is shut. So I think that going into the season, Raiders and Tennessee were at least comparable. I have Derrick Henry in fantasy, so I'm a scorned lover when it comes to how that's played out this year.
That's why, huh?
Trade him to the Rams. I'm not saying he'd be better in fantasy. I'm saying he wouldn't be RB 30 as he is at this point. I don't think it's actually that, but just not great. So I'm going to take the Raiders because the Raiders are favored in this game, and because I think that the Raiders offense matched up against the Titans, who, as much as I love Kevin Byard and Amani Hooker, still can't really guard people in the secondary. Maybe they just copy the Cardinals game plan. If you're the Titans on defense, just copy their game plan. And obviously Taylor Lewan is out. Ryan Tannehill is still Ryan Tannehill. I'm going to bet on the Raiders, but I don't have the same level of confidence that I had last week in the Raiders.
All right, guys, is the answer Raider Nation or tied it up? Drop below in the comments on who's going to be winning this game, this must-win game for both teams. Leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on social media at Juju Talk Sports, Kyle Ledbetter. Stay safe, happy, and healthy, and we'll see you on the next one.